Good evening, Dungeon Masters. I'm Baron DeRopp. One of the greatest threats to the long-term viability of a D&D campaign is scheduling conflicts. All too often, we fall into the trap of canceling game sessions because someone can't be present at the table. And once this happens, the rest of the players begin to lose interest, further dragging the momentum of the game. But what if by increasing the number of players who could be present at the table, each with a stable of multiple characters, and by creating a vast world for them to explore, you'd never face that kind of scheduling problem again. In 2001, Ben Robbins, famed author of the world-building game Microscope, started working on a new campaign setting he named the West Marches. His experiment explored a different style of running campaigns than was typically done during the 3rd edition era. Instead of the typical 3 to 5 players who were expected to show up every Tuesday night for game sessions, Robbins would push the onus of scheduling the game onto the players. Robbins also increased the player pool to well over a dozen people, with the expectation that not everyone had to be present. With these adjustments made, he designed a campaign setting that reflected some of the unusual advantages that the expanded player base afforded. Robbins's West Marches campaign focused on a wilderness area on the edge of society where ruins, dungeons, monsters, and the like all existed outside of an otherwise safe town. Over the course of the campaign, Robbins's players were expected to network with each other, to schedule pickup sessions, discuss what they wanted to explore between sessions, collect treasure, and thwart any dangers brewing in the wilderness. Robbins's campaign, which he blogged about extensively, and that I'll link to in the description, was largely a success, but he did observe some quirks about this style of play. To build your own West Marches style campaign setting, the focus of your labor should be on facilitating exploration outside of a safe starting location. While talking heads on the internet will insist that the entire town should be safe and boring in order to push players into the wilderness and explore, as Robbins insisted in his game, this also doesn't mean that a West Marches campaign can't take place in a sprawling metropolis. A whole town, a neighborhood, or even just the Adventurers Guild Hall can be that safe location players can return to at the end of each game session. Further, to encourage exploration, standing quest hooks should be developed that invite players to explore the wilderness region. Thin-plotted, Bethesda-style Radiant quests are likely good enough to get the exploration moving. Examples include being hired to kill a bandit captain in a nearby ruined fort, strange chanting heard by mushroom hunters in a nearby cave, and how a dragon was spotted flying over a mountain ridge by some town patrol. Since your players will be experiencing the game in pickup sessions, that is, they show up to sessions whenever they have the availability with no fixed expectation of their attendance, adventure design should be compartmentalized so that the adventure can be fully experienced in a single session. As a result, dungeons should likely have less than 8 rooms, combat encounters, which obviously absorb the most amount of time, should be somewhat limited, and any dangerous locations the players explore should include a few references to other exploration-worthy locations. This will facilitate adventure planning in group chats between future sessions. A great example of a campaign setting ripe for this kind of play is Gary Gygax's 1980 release, The Keep on the Borderlands. In this setting, players start in a small keep at the edge of society, and can tangle with cannibal lizard folk in a swamp, monsters living in a nearby cave network, a madman hermit in the wilderness, and even a nefarious priest living in the keep, waiting for a good plot twist. Likewise, when designing your own campaign setting for this style of gameplay, place smaller pockets of various monsters scattered around the wilderness who all vie for control of their little own corner of nature. This will give you plenty of factions for your players to interact with as they explore. Goblins, orcs, necromancers and their squads of skeletons, or even a pack of kobolds and their revered red dragon are all low-effort enemies to stick somewhere on the map. Each group should have their own petty internal squabbles, and each their own dungeon waiting to be crawled and looted. Lastly, a West Marches style campaign pushes the responsibility of mapping, treasure accounting, quest logging, and any other documentation onto the players. Encourage the players to do this by granting them bonus XP and extra healing potions for undertaking this important task. Active journaling in this way will keep absent players who are interested in the game abreast of available treasure stashed at the home base, what future quests they might want to go on, and what other players have discovered out in the wilderness. If you decide to use a sprawling metropolis as a West Marches style campaign, then you should definitely check out this video's sponsor, Chamomile Has Adventures, and their new Kickstarter, The Traveler's Guide to the City of Intrigue. This 5th edition supplement is filled with details for Wizard Lab experiments gone wrong, the cloak and dagger intrigue of cultured elite, and the various plagues that prey on the citizens caught in the middle. One of the better third-party publication mechanics I've seen developed by Chamomile is how the new metropolis-specific subclasses use hit dice as resources for various abilities, not just healing after a short rest. The Traveler's Guide series doesn't stop at the City of Intrigue, however. Ready for download are tons of other gazetteers and guides detailing locations, subclasses, ancestries, and more. To check out Chamomile's Kickstarter and other supplements including the Traveler's Guide to Darkwood, the Rogue City of Draxi, or the Elemental Chaos, check out the links in the description below. Thanks Chamomile for sponsoring this video. Since your players will only intermittently show up at the table and at varying times, the notion of crafting a long-term, tightly woven epic story that culminates with fighting a major antagonist kind of goes out the window. However, while game sessions will need to be digestible, bite-sized adventures that can be completed in a single session, this doesn't mean that you can't have an overarching threat the players slowly work on tackling. Much like the late 90s TV series Buffy the Vampire Slayer, each season had an overarching plot, like destroying the master vampire before he can open a hellgate underneath the high school. But the season as a whole has lots of Monster of the Week episodes, adding interesting, even if unnecessary detail to that final encounter at the end of the season. Therefore, sticking a portal to the abyss somewhere at the far end of the map and showing proof that demons keep meddling in the affairs of all the local factions is a quick way to foretell a showdown with some horrid demon, but not requiring the party to dig up any particular slew of quest items before they do so. Further, managing a larger pool of players can be difficult and requires a certain kind of people skills which shouldn't be understated. Care should be taken to ensure that everyone in your player base isn't just well liked by the dungeon master, but also among everyone else. Any animosity or insecurities among the players can be detrimental to the long-term success of the campaign. As the old saying goes, too many cooks spoil the pot. While these concerns are definitely valid for a typical group of 3 to 5 players, this interpersonal issue becomes even more magnified the larger the player pool becomes. Furthermore, keeping players engaged who appear at the table less frequently is also a common concern. It's extremely likely you'll have players who are present at nearly every session, roughly 20% of your player pool. But the less frequently appearing players will commonly feel as if they're falling behind, even though falling behind is literally impossible thanks to the way West Marches campaigns are designed and played. Reminding players that they should have a number of characters waiting in the wings, especially a level 1 or level 2 character, so they can adventure with a player who hasn't been present as much, and encourage them to do so is extremely important. In essence, if you're willing to trade a deep and complex narrative that requires each party member to show up every week in exchange for tons of adventures waiting to be explored with a cadre of murder hobos, West Marches might be the very thing that you're looking for. If you'd like to help me make more content like this in the future, please consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a channel member. Thanks for watching, Dungeon Masters, and until next time, good night.